Welcome to Roll for Crit. Today, we are going to be taking a close examination, scientifically perhaps, of Terraforming Mars, the board game from Stronghold Games. This has been out for a little bit of time now. We are taking our official review for it today. This is a game that we like, and we're going to tell you why. So, you in this game are going to be exploring Mars. In fact, you're colonizing Mars. You're multiple different corporations. Each player is trying to make Mars better than anyone else.
Right. You're all trying to show off who can pretty much make it the most habitable. The game actually ends when it hits sort of the end point of oxygen, temperature, and water added to the planet.
Right. So you all kind of win by getting to live on Mars. But there's one winner determined by victory points, which comes from a combination of this track and plus your cards that you can get. As well as some of these other things like milestones and awards that we'll get into briefly. But basically, on your turn, you're going to have a hand of cards, and you can pay money to play them. In front of you will be your little player board where you have multiple different types of resources as well as their income tracked here. So at the end of each phase, they're called generations, you will be generating however many this tells you. So you got your money, steel, titanium, plants, energy, and heat.
Yeah, each one sort of helps us a certain thing. Money is mostly for playing cards. Titanium is mostly for, steel, first, is mostly for building regular buildings that would be on there, or mining operations. Mm-hmm. Titanium usually affects more space stuff, like whether it's like satellites and stuff like that. Plant is for growing like forests, which helps raise the oxygen, making it more habitable. Power is power, powering things up. And heat is actually helps you make temperature increase.
Yeah, so those resources can be used in a variety of different ways. All the ones you said, certain cards sometimes require them. And depending on what kind of engine you're going for, you might be strong in some, weak in others. You might have a little of everything. And yes, that's one of the big things you'll be doing, like you said, placing tiles, plants. You can also make cities, as well as ocean tiles,
yes,
which go in designated spots on the board.
Yes. In addition, when you build on certain spots, they may give a reward, such as giving you 2 plant tokens or letting you draw more cards.
Yeah, and every time you do one of those things to improve the planet, increasing the oxygen, adding some greenery, you move your TR track up over here, which is your victory points and also adds to your income. So you really are always going to be wanting to do that. It's in your best interest.
Another interesting thing is you do get more cards at the end of each turn, or beginning each round, but when you draw, you're given 4, and you look at them, and you actually don't get to keep them all. For each card you want to keep, you have to be able to pay 3. So it's not just, this is a good card. You have to think, is this worth me spending 3 just to have in my hand?
Yeah, before you even pay to actually use it, you're already paying money to do that, which at first can seem, to me at least, seem very punishing because you're used to in a game just being able to say, oh, this is mine now. So you got to kind of readjust to really thinking about the costs.
Yeah, especially early on, you're going to be really thinking, is this worth it now? Like, it's a good card, but it's not an early game card.
Right.
So it's only going to hurt, be sitting in my hand and causing me more damage.
Many cards actually have specific requirements that might say the oxygen level must be at 7%, and if it's not, you can't play it.
Right, so if you get that early on, you're like, this is worthless. This is not going to happen for a while.
Yeah, or if you get it too late, also. Then you've got these milestones and awards down here, which are things that players can take their turns to fund. And if they do, 3 of each one will be activated, and they're basically like achievements.
Mm-hmm. The difference is milestones are more of the first one to do it. So it'd be the first one to get maybe 5 cities or something. Mm-hmm. So that's more of it. As soon as then they get the points they get then. The awards one, however, they'll fund, and at the end of the game, there'll be a first and second place. So what's different between the two is the awards at the end. Because of that, you could be like, oh, I'm going to fund this one because it's whoever has the most rating at the end. Mm-hmm. But what may happen is after you fund that, someone may go in front of you, which you thought was a guarantee reward, isn't anymore. But they increase in value to fund the next one. So it is a challenge of, do I fund it early so it's cheaper, or later when I can guarantee to be first place?
Exactly. Do you want to hit it early to be safe, or hold back and maybe end up paying for it later on? You're going to be playing a lot of cards, and they're going to go. Many of them will go in front of you. There are events which are one-time use.
They'll look like this.
There are green cards, which are something that will come into play, affect your board perhaps, and then you may keep it for later on for the tags up here.
Which we'll explain after
Then finally, there's the blue cards, which will actually supply you usually with actions that you can also do on your turn. So you're going to have your own individual things that you can do that other people cannot.
Yeah, and what's really cool is mentioning the tags. So there's a lot of cards that'll be like, this will give you a point for every nature tag you have or something. So you may actually, when you're building your engine, you may be going for more of a nature engine, more of a space engine, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And some of them even will add tokens to them. Like, for example, this is a bacteria. There's a lot of bacteria in this game, which will actually add bacteria tokens on it, which you can then spend, or they'll give points at the end for each token on it. Your favorite, the tardigrade.
I love those tardigrades.
Which isn't out now. But so that adds this whole other element of building like this card's small engine.
Yeah. Engine building is definitely the name of the game. There's a lot of that going on, and depending on how you're doing, which cards you find, it can be a very different experience. At the start of the game, you actually have a corporation card. You've got these beginner ones,
right,
which are standard, kind of basic. And then you have these more advanced ones, which supply you with more focused types of abilities.
There'll be one, for example, that maybe rewards you for playing Earth tags, which is what you had in our last game. Some may reward you, start you off with more plant production and make it easier to make more forests, which is sort of pushing you to be like, you should probably go in that direction.
So you can really end up with a more customized version of your strategy for the game.
However, that doesn't set you in stone there. I know one of our games, my brother, who was playing with us, actually had one that supported heavy mining in the brown buildings, but he shifted completely over to greenery halfway through the game. I don't think he even tried to. He just happened to. He's just like, my engine changed.
Yeah, it's one of the things I like about this game. It doesn't feel like you're pigeonholed into a strategy like that. This is a game like Scythe, which we praised for the same thing, where you won't really be able to know who's in the lead. You might have a guess, but there's always enough hidden information, enough scores that will get tallied at the end that you still feel like you're in the running. And often you are still in the running. It's pretty well balanced, even with all these different corporations. You can kind of choose to specialize in what you want. You could be like, oh, you know what, this game, I'm going to just really go for colonizing the planet itself with these tiles. Or this game, you know, I'm just going to try to make the most money I can and play as many cards as I can. So there's a lot of replayability even in just what's available in the base.
Right. Like the first time I played this, I did go for the green engine. And the last time I played it, I didn't go with that. I actually went with a sort of this space engine. And both are really fun. And there are advanced cards in there that are a bit more player interaction. They're not too much in our opinion. Like we were able to like maybe make you lose a few resources and stuff, but nothing that it wasn't like, I'm taking all these from you.
Yeah, I thought it was the perfect amount of PvP. Nothing devastating, but enough to keep it interesting. And there's also that player interaction in the sense of, oh, I really hope like no one raises that oxygen too far because I need it at a certain level or something.
Yeah,
like that.
Some of my favorite ones though aren't as much hurting you as much as like I had a card that was like, if you played this tag, I get a bonus.
Right, so you're still paying attention to what other people are doing on their turns. Another cool thing is on your turn you can do up to 2 actions, which we found, I know, really nice because if you aren't sure what to do for your second action, a lot of times it's in your best interest to just stop.
It does help with a game because this is one of those games that could easily fall under a heavy analysis paralysis.
Yeah,
because you can, especially if you do a draw engine like I did, have a lot of cards in your hand.
Yeah, a lot of cards. There are a lot of choices to be made. What do you want to play and when do you want to play it is often more important. Usually you know what you want to do on your turn. It's just what order should you do.
Right, exactly.
I mean, it's such a cool game. It's really smart. The strategies that you have to come up with are really interesting and really fun to play. It's definitely more on the advanced, heavier side of games.
Oh yeah, and this is definitely, but because of that, every time you sit down, I feel like most strategies are viable. You don't hit the table and be like, there's no reason for me to do this. Because if you get a corporation that fits certain strategies, you're like, well, last time I did green because I had a corporation that supported that. If I have one now that supports energy buildup, well, I'm going to try to follow that now.
Yeah, you might even have the same corporation and still find a way to work through it in a new way. For Terraforming Mars, here are our crits and misses. Crits, there is a very satisfying engine building mechanic built into the game.
Yeah, I'm always a big fan of engine building because it's that power feeling going up. And because there's so many different ways you can do engine building, and you can have so much fun to have like multiple engines going at once.
I found that unlike some other games, where sometimes the game will end right as your engine gets good. This doesn't have that. You really get to enjoy it, I thought. There's plenty of replayability here. There are multiple strategies you can employ differently every time you play. The game feels very balanced. There's usually no runaway winner. It's usually hard to determine who's in the lead at any given time, so you always feel like you're in the race. There's just the right amount of PvP and player interaction involved. It doesn't feel too mean or too nice. And we also did like the scientific, factual value of the game. It is based in a lot of real science about Mars and colonization, and there's some cool educational value there.
For science. For misses, this is a bit more complicated of a game. There are a lot of cards and a lot of different ways that can interact with other cards, meaning you may have a bit of an analysis paralysis deciding which cards to play in what order and how to make sure they interact optimally. And a big thing is really there are only two kinds of tokens, your own player tokens and counter tokens, which count for money, different resources, and tokens on other cards, which can get a little confusing and making sure like you don't mix them up somehow and stay in the right place.
Yeah, I really would love it if there were an advanced deluxe version of this game where you actually had player boards with insets in them, because if something shakes the table or you look away and accidentally move a token, it's pretty easy to get confused as to what was supposed to go where.
Overall, that's our review of Terraforming Mars. We thought it was the perfect amount of complication, a lot of fun strategies. You can, every time you sit down at the table, it'll be different. You'll feel like you're doing something new. It doesn't get boring. Had fun every time we've sat down to play it.
Yeah, really, really good. Really, you can really get into it. You feel like you're making Mars a better place, even if you don't win at the end. It's cool to look at your board and be like, hey, look, there's Mars. We made oceans on that thing. We're awesome.
We can survive now.
Yeah, this is a little peek into the future, maybe, what our lives will be like later on. Stay tuned. Stay tuned to see if that happens or if it doesn't. Until that day, I'm Jonathan Estes.
I'm Mo Keeler, and this has been a Roll for Crit review.
Make sure you like and subscribe and leave your comments down below.
Before it's too late!